We'd like to thank our sponsor, Purina Pro Plan, Fuel for Life. More sporting dog champions feed Pro Plan than any other brand of dog food. Welcome back to another episode of Save It for the Blind. Today, we are going to conclude our last part of the Legacy of California Waterfowling with Yancey Forest-Knowles. Enjoy Part 6, Noma Sinapa Marsh and California's North Coast.
It's great to be back with you gentlemen, and I appreciate the opportunity to have a discussion with you and share some information I hope will be interesting.
Absolutely. I'm excited.
Yeah, good. Me too. And as I begin, I want to make sure and acknowledge the good work that's been done by other historians before me. And among those are Wayne Caputh and Mike Miller, Philip Garone, and Frank Hall. They've all done a great job. So the North Coast region is the largest and most diverse coastal wetlands complex in California, outside of the San Francisco Bay Delta. The area's wetlands provide a particularly important link in the coastal migration route for Pacific flyway waterfowl and shorebirds. These coastal wetlands support the largest concentration of wintering waterfowl and shorebirds between San Francisco Bay and Coos Bay in Oregon. And during the spring and fall, it's not uncommon for 200,000 or more ducks and geese to use the mosaic, the brackish and freshwater marshes that encompass this area. Of course, the part of it that we know the most about, is the Humboldt Bay region. Yeah. We'll talk about that, but the other basins in that area as well. California's north coast is dominated by foggy and rainy weather, and in this environment, vast redwood forests developed. This region, however, has been important for more than a redwood forest. The associated bays and lagoons and estuaries and river mouths and flooded meadows supported a thriving waterfowl hunting tradition since European settlement. Waterfowl habitat along the north coast begins just south of the Oregon border, with Tilla Slough, Ayla Slough, the Smith River bottoms, and by the way, bottoms is a term associated with North Coast wetlands only, not other areas. Lake Talawa and Lake Earl, immediately north of Crescent City, in Del Norte County. Canvasbacks and other waterfowl have frequent habitats for eons, and its favored hunting area. Big Lagoon and Stone Lagoon, south of Crescent City, also support waterfowl hunting. South of these lagoons, Humboldt Bay and the wet pastures of the Beatrice Bottoms and the Eel River Bottoms create wide coastal plains, very different from the rainforest. There are coastal bluffs and mountains that surround it. From Humboldt Bay, running south for some 250 miles, however, there are almost no significant coastal habitats, except for a small wetland area immediately north of Fort Bragg in Mendocino County. But this is relatively insignificant to waterfowl hunters. Nothing more until reaching Bodega Bay in Sonoma County and Tomales Bay, Drake's Estero, and Estero de Limator, which is in today's Point Reyes National Seashore, and Bolinas Lagoon in Marin County. This area has supported a substantial waterfowl hunting tradition since its settlement, especially for black brant. The only other areas of interest are the Laguna de Santa Rosa, which I had mentioned in one other episode, which is between Santa Rosa and Sebastopol. It's an area that runs about almost 30 miles from north to south. It connects with the Russian River, and it gets flooded almost every single year as the Russian River rises in the winter rains. And I had a lease on the Laguna for 10 years in the 70s. Phenomenal hunting, and it still can be quite good. I still hunt there a bit in a floating blind a little north of that area. But there's actually, believe it or not, a very small state wildlife area that one can access by boat. You used to be able to walk in there, but that's disallowed now. You have to wait until it floods, and you can go in by boat. and hunters can access that. You don't need to have a reservation. Tends to be a little bit overcrowded at times, but a guy can still go in there and shoot some nice ducks. There are also numerous farm ponds in West Marin County that still attract good numbers of ducks. And Clear Lake, especially the wetlands of the West End and Lake County, provided good sport in past years. It's still available to hunt in, and I think a fella could go down there and shoot a duck or two occasionally. Unique to locations in north coastal hunting areas are Brant hunting, and also, by the way, takes place way down south in Morro Bay, and also the stilt hunting, which takes place in San Pablo Bay as well, and sculling. And sculling isn't just common to the North Coast area. It takes place throughout the state in a variety of habitats, but it was certainly born in the Humboldt Bay area. By the way, that's still the area if a person wanted to acquire a custom-made skull boat, they could get one. So let's look at each of these areas as they were practiced. Brant hunting on the North Coast was an affair in which public hunting trumped club hunting. Brant hunting was reserved for those hardy enough to scull through the open bays, which I did in my scull boat for years, both in Tamales and Bodega Bays, or to drag large rigs of heavy decoys to traditional shore or floating blinds in or along public waters. Only the few clubs on Point Reyes and Tamales Bay took Brant regularly. Duck hunting was another matter entirely. North Coast duck clubs dotted the bottomlands surrounding Humboldt Bay, the coastal plains and the Smith River bottomlands near Lakes Earl and Tolowa, and between Point Reyes and Tamales Bay. Sculling as a technique is difficult to master, but when done correctly, it provides limits of Brant. Luring Brant into shooting distances takes large numbers of decoys, and often the number of Brant decoys in use on a hunt day may have outnumbered the live birds on any given shoot day and any given place. The most important shore-based Brant hunting occurred on the bay side of Humboldt Bay and its south spit. Competition was particularly stiff during November when the Brant arrived after their 2-day flight from Bristol Bay in Alaska. Today, there is a maximum 3-week season, and the limit is 2 birds daily. The dilemma is that the vast majority of birds often remain in Humboldt Bay for 2 weeks of the season, limiting the other 2 primary hunting areas, Tamales and Morro Bays, with 1 week at most. Major concentrations of Brant now winter and are hunted extensively in San Quintin Bay, San Quintin Bay in Baja, Mexico, and the coastal areas of northern Sonora in the mainland. Been down there with Brad Jones, owned a duck call company, and we were down there testing the first Brant call that I'm aware of in the nation. And we had successful hunts on the Brant down there. Now, one of the big bays that we shot on, it was kind of interesting talking about the call. You know, most people call Brant with their mouth. It's real easy to trill your tongue and make their basic sounds. But, you know, they're only going to hear you some hundreds of yards away at the most. But with this call, we were calling birds from half a mile. It was absolutely amazing. So, Brant, a great species to hunt, and one of the best eating birds there are out there. Now, the northern coastal region waterfowl clubs. North Coast duck clubs dotted the bottomlands surrounding Humboldt Bay, the coastal plains, and the Smith River bottomlands near Lake Earl and Tolowa, and between Point Reyes and Tamales Bay. There were many, many clubs of historical interest. So a couple of historical clubs of interest. The Country Club was developed in 1890, and the club lands actually were on a leased 76,000-acre ranch, which, you know, primarily were for deer and quail. But the duck shooting on the Laguna behind Drake's Bay was fabulous, and they often harvested 50 canvasbacks per day per hunter. And on Humboldt Bay, the Fish and Game Club, which was developed in 1895, was located on the McBride Ranch in the Beatrice Bottoms, which became the Salmon Creek Wildlife Preserve in 1958. 1,000 ducks were shot there. One of the neat things about this club was that, like so many other areas that were fortunate to develop relationships with trains that would stop at their clubs, or boats in the Delta that would stop at their clubs, the Fish and Game Club had a relationship also, and they would get out and they would wag a flag when they wanted the train to stop to either drop hunters off or to pick them back up again. A couple of neat stories that came out of there. They had tremendous problem with poaching, and so they had to hire keepers. They had to keep people out of there. So one story is written about in December 1910. The keeper encountered two quote-unquote poachers shooting ducks. He took away their guns and gave them a good dunking in the pond. That's the way you took care of problems in those days. In 1922, another fella was caught and prosecuted for poaching on the club's preserve, for shooting after sundown, and for threatening the keeper.
Oh, wow.
That's the way I guess locals thought they'd handle the problem.
Yeah.
But many, many well-known duck clubs in that area.
Was that the only club that had a train stop, or were there other ones in that area that also had train stops?
Tell you the truth, that's the only one that I'm aware of.
Yeah.
It
doesn't seem obviously like a common thing in that area, so I could see it just being one.
So, tremendous tradition of waterfowling in the North Coast area. I think most of us hear primarily about the Humboldt Bay region, but extended all the way from the Oregon border down to San Francisco. Okay, let's talk about the Central Coast a bit. This region was located between the Golden Gate and Point Conception. The areas hunted were clusters of lakes and lagoons and marshes of associated river mouths. These included the Dunn Lakes, the Lower Santa Maria River Valley, and Morro Bay, all in San Luis Obispo County. The northern Salinas Valley from today's town of Salinas to the mouth of the Pajaro River in Monterey County, and Soap Lake near San Felipe in northern San Benito County. There were also smaller wetlands in Santa Cruz County and San Mateo counties. Almost all of these areas were drained by the early 20th century for agriculture, except Elkhorn Slough and Monterey County, which is tidal. The most extensive wetlands in the region were the lower Salinas River Valley and north to near Elkhorn Slough. In the earliest times, geese were more abundant than ducks in these areas. The 1910 to 1910 area was the most prominent time for coastal duck clubs, as in all the coastal regions. And by the 1920s, with most coastal wetlands converted into agricultural lands, most coastal hunters now had to turn to the grasslands for their hunting. It's interesting to note that many of these clubs that they developed were named for the areas in which they lived. For example, the Hollister, the Salinas, the San Jose, the Gilroy, the Santa Cruz, each of these, again, named for the areas that these hunters came from. Only a few hunting areas remain in the southern coastal region. Morro Bay for Brant, the Salinas Valley River Wildlife Area, and the Elkhorn Slough National Estuarine Reserve. Lots of historical duck clubs in these areas, too. I'll tell you about a couple of them. Soap Lake Gun Club, acknowledged in 1883 as the first duck club in the region, just east of Gilroy. Its wetlands include San Felipe Lake and the Pajaro River drainage. And I can remember as a kid going over to hunt in the grasslands on the weekends with my uncle, driving past that area, not knowing what it was at the time. Mm-hmm. And imagining every time, why doesn't somebody duck hunt? It looks fabulous. And, after you've passed it, you crawl up and go over the pass at the top of the mountains, the Pacheco Pass, which, by the way, when that opened up, it facilitated a lot of the people that lived in the coastal area going into the grasslands to hunt. And so that was that site was originally owned by the Miller and Lux Company. Gabilan Gun Club, developed in 1905, leased the Espinosa and Merritt Lakes near Castroville. They had an expensive clubhouse that was constructed there with 22 bedrooms. It was disbanded in 1925 due to a major reclamation project. The Espinosa Gun Club in 1885 with 2 guns that shot, get this now, 81 gadwall on December 21st. We don't hear about that often, do we? It had 58 members, primarily from San Francisco, including Charles Crocker's son, George Crocker, of course, one of the big 4 of the Crockers, Timothy Hopkins, son of Mark Hopkins, the namesake for the famous hotel in San Francisco, Peter Spreckles of Spreckles Sugar fame. This was drained in 1925. Another famous one is the Empire Gun Club that was in existence from 1902 to 1923 near Elkhorn Slough, and it was started by a San Francisco businessman as well. Now it's within the Elkhorn Slough. And then finally, I'll just mention the J. Henry Meyer Club, developed in 1905, adjacent to the Empire Club, where he purchased 192 acres and started his own club. Meyer and a guest one day shot 50 pintail there in 1913, and in 1915 converted that club site to a dairy. He also was a railroad tycoon and ran a spur line to his Empire Club, the club of which is now the Elkhorn Slough National Estuary and Research Reserve.
That's cool. Now, like going back to the coasts, we heard in the market hunting days, canvasback was king. Were Brant also targeted during those times, or was it something that it was probably a little harder to successfully?
Well, anywhere, the primary Brant hunting areas, as we all know, are Humboldt, Tamales, a little bit in Bodega, south of there, Morro Bay, and then actually San Diego Bay had fabulous Brant hunting. There's not much acknowledged beyond that. Brant are pretty particular.
Yeah.
They feed only on eelgrass.
Right.
And those are the major areas that eelgrass grew at the time.
Interesting. All right.
I don't have much info up there. I've always wanted to shoot a Brant.
I went one time and was unsuccessful, but it was cool. We went out on like a Banks boat in Tamales Bay, and it was a very, very cool experience, but it's the one thing on the bucket list I got to check off.
Have you ever sculled?
Yes. Used to scull Fall River. Yeah.
Oh.
Yeah.
Other thing I've never done.
Yeah,
You're the guy I heard about that used to scull up on Fall River.
Probably.
Yeah.
Me and my brother. So I was always in the front, but I was right-handed. My brother's left-handed, so it worked out where we could both shoot. But yeah, it was phenomenal to grow up.
Something interesting about Brant is they travel in family groups, which can be fairly large at times. Probably the average family group, if I had to guess, probably 25 birds. But because they're captured and banded in family groups, if you shoot a Brant and it's banded, probably at least half of that flock's going to be banded. And the Brant have 2 bands on them. They have a metal band and a plastic band. Metal bands are the standard ones that we all see, U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service. The plastic bands come in 7 colors, and the colors indicate the area in which they were banned. And the one everybody wants to get is the black one from Russia.
Oh, interesting.
I didn't know that.
Yeah. So if you get a Brant that's banded, he'll probably have 2 bands on.
Yeah. I have heard that where people do shoot into them and multiple.
Yeah. It's not a dark red meat, kind of a pink meat almost.
I was going to say, you said it tastes really good.
Yeah,
I've heard it's like the best thing. Like,
Really?
over specs and everything.
I don't know if I'd go over specs, but it's equally good
Okay.
to a spec. And as I started to say, it's got a pink meat, which is similar to lamb versus steak.
Oh, interesting.
Same thing on the Brant versus
Well, I think it's a totally different diet compared to like a spec.
Yeah.
strictly eelgrass, 100% eelgrass. And you know what they'll do today is because of the pressure of hunting, they stay out in the ocean till the tide starts dropping, and then they come in. And interestingly, they only come in over the river mouths. They don't fly over land to come in and feed. And I find that, at least in my experience, they're pretty easy to decoy.
Mm-hmm.
And, you start calling them, and they could be 500,000 yards away, and most of the time they'll turn unless they're being pressured and come in.
Interesting. Yeah.
And they're in size, they're slightly larger than a mallard.
Yeah, it's something I want to go back after. I've heard nothing but good things about, especially eating them. That's unique. So.
And they make great mounts, of course.
Yeah.
Yeah, definitely.
Well, Yancey, just want to say thank you so much for really just talking about all of California in general, and thank you for doing all your research for the hunting community. I think that is phenomenal and something to pass on for generations.
Well, I do want to acknowledge again that there's been some great people out before me that have done some amazing work, and it's nice to be able to draw upon what they've learned as well as what I've learned.
Yeah, no, absolutely. Well, thank you again, and this is going to conclude our episodes on waterfowling in California. So, Yancey, thank you so much.
It's been my pleasure.
Yeah.
Thank you for inviting me.
Thank you for tuning in to this episode of Save It for the Blind podcast. You can find our podcast on Apple, Spotify, or wherever you listen to your podcasts.